The boy cried at his mother's grave, begging her to take him, and a miracle happened. Brandon Porter, a 7-year-old boy, had been in a terrible accident with his mother. Unfortunately, she didn't survive her injuries, leaving the boy completely alone. Just when Brandon was about to give up, something incredible happened. It was nighttime, the rain was falling heavily, but Brandon and his mother, Chloe, needed to head home. "Come on, sweetheart. I left your favorite food in the oven. When we get back, we'll eat together," Chloe said, putting him in the car seat. This routine was common and happened almost daily. They lived in a small town, but Chloe worked in Atlanta, where the company's headquarters were located. To be close to her son in case of any emergency, she enrolled Brandon in a school near her office. With no other family members, mother and son were very close. The drives home were usually calm, but that night the rain was heavier than usual. Brandon was frightened by the noise of the trucks, but everything seemed under control. Sadly, that wasn't the case. Chloe was driving carefully with Brandon sleeping in the back seat when a truck driver tried to overtake at high speed, crashing into the side of the car. The vehicle was thrown off the road, spun and flipped. Dazed and scared, Chloe looked for her son, but the seatbelt and the car's position hid him. "It's okay, sweetie, it's over, we're fine," she tried to comfort. Brandon confirmed he was safe in his car seat, but the shock left him unable to cry. Help arrived after about 30 minutes. The truck driver who caused the accident called for assistance, explaining that he was trying to make it home for his daughter's birthday. However, he missed his daughter's birthday and was taken to the police station while Chloe and Brandon went to the hospital by ambulance. It was during the medical examination that they realized not everything was all right. The doctors examined Brandon and, surprisingly, found nothing to worry about. However, Chloe was in critical condition, and the adrenaline of the moment may have masked her problem, resulting in a severe internal hemorrhage that required emergency surgery. Brandon felt lost with the doctors running around his mother. "Hey, kid, how about we go grab something to eat?" asked a doctor named Christian, a newly graduated resident. When he asked about Brandon's father, the boy revealed that he had never met him and didn't even know who he was. Brandon Porter, just a 7-year-old boy, devoured a sandwich and some ice cream, but as soon as he had the chance, he asked the doctor a question that reflected his greatest concern. "Sir, is Mom going to be okay?" The resident, inexperienced in handling these situations, found himself without an answer. He knew the importance of not promising what he couldn't guarantee, but tried to calm the boy. "Kid, my colleagues are doing everything they can for your mum. Don't worry, you'll be back home soon." Christian stayed by Brandon's side the entire time, even when the boy resisted before finally falling asleep. One of the doctors came in and said that Chloe, still in the operating room, was conscious and wanted to see her son. Christian anticipated what would happen and woke Brandon up, taking him to see his mother. Lying in bed, Chloe asked Brandon to come closer. She asked him to promise to always be honest and caring with others, just as he was with her. Above all, she asked him to be stronger than ever because his life was about to change. "Finally, my dear Brandon, know that I love you and will always take care of you." Tears streamed down Chloe's face as she hugged her son for the last time. That night, Chloe passed away, leaving Brandon all alone to face the world. With no father and no other family members, social services were called, and Brandon ended up in an orphanage. He resisted at first. It was hard to accept that not long ago he had a home, a mother who loved him more than anything, and a stable routine. The funeral was simple, with only Christian and some of Chloe's colleagues in attendance. Brandon said goodbye to his mother and made a tearful promise. "I will always visit you, Mum. I will never forget your last words, or who you were to me. The first nights at the orphanage were difficult. His last peaceful sleep had been in the car on the way home. The memories came back intensely during the night. Brandon dreamed that Chloe walked through the orphanage gates to pick him up, and when he woke up, he was still wrapped in the emotions of that dream. He would spend hours thinking about it, isolating himself more and more as he didn't interact much with the other children. Being the new kid, he was teased. "Hey Brandon, are you thinking about your mum's ghost again? You'd better stop being a crybaby and accept that she's dead. No one's going to want to adopt a sentimental baby like you." The orphanage staff seemed indifferent, letting things run their course. On some mornings, they would take the children to a nearby park. Although there were toys and opportunities for interaction, Brandon couldn't fit in. When he noticed that the park was near the cemetery where his mother was buried, he would sneak away from the group to fulfill his promise of always visiting her while everyone was distracted. He couldn't leave the orphanage whenever he wanted, so he took the opportunities he could. Reaching the grave, Brandon sat down and began to vent about his life now that she wasn't around. In just 10 minutes, he expressed more than he had in weeks at the orphanage. To the boy, it was as if his mother were truly there. Brandon could even imagine what she would say and how she would laugh when he told her something funny. "Mom, how much I miss you," he thought incessantly like a mantra. He shared the suffering at the orphanage, describing the children's cruel behavior and the apparent lack of support from the staff. "I have nothing left here. I have no one, and I don't feel happy anymore like I did with you, Mom," Brandon vented, raising his voice, mixing anger and tears. "I wish I could disappear from this world, not exist anymore. I don't want to live without you. Take me with you, take me," he cried out. Suddenly, a hand touched his shoulder, stroking it as if seeking to comfort him. Brandon felt warmth in his chest and seemed to be dreaming, but the sensation was surprisingly real. When he turned around, he was met by a woman with a charming smile. "Are you okay? I saw you crying and decided to check if you needed anything," said the mysterious woman. Brandon tried to wipe away his tears, struggling to express what he was feeling, but couldn't. "I understand it's hard, but I see that you don't want to be alone either. How about I sit next to you and we stay together?" she suggested, trying to console the boy. Brandon nodded. The woman introduced herself as Emily, visiting her son's grave, who had died a few years ago and was a bit older than Brandon. The boy then let his guard down and finally managed to speak. He talked about the recent loss of his mother and how he had run away from the orphanage outing to be there. They talked for a while and Emily offered to take him back to the orphanage. Brandon didn't know the exact address but remembered the streets he had taken to get there. As they returned, they passed by the park and spotted a carousel. Emily noticed Brandon's fascination with the ride and encouraged him to hop on one of the horses. The carousel began to spin and the boy smiled for the first time in weeks. Looking around, he noticed the decorated trees and lights indicating Christmas was approaching. After getting off the ride, Brandon accidentally stepped on something bulky. He looked down and saw a leather wallet. With only a few people in the park, he picked it up discreetly, checking if anyone might be the owner. Opening it, Brandon was astonished. He had never seen so much money in his life, several $100 bills, some crumpled. It was enough to escape the orphanage for good. Back with Emily, Brandon remained silent about his discovery. He wondered how someone could lose all that money without coming back to search for it. But as they left the park, passing by a security guard, Brandon felt a jolt through his body. He remembered the promise he made to his mother on her deathbed, to be honest and considerate toward others. Asking Emily to wait a moment, Brandon took the wallet from his pocket and handed it to the guard, saying that someone had lost it near the carousel. The guard, relieved, exclaimed, "My goodness, how lucky you found Mr. Watson's wallet, kid. He's one of our longest-serving staff members and was devastated to have lost his entire year-end salary. You've just saved Christmas for his family, little guy." The guard turned to Emily and said, "Congratulations on your son, ma'am. You must be very proud of him." This final comment caused silent pain in both of them. When Emily and Brandon finally arrived at the orphanage, they expected to find everyone worried about the boy's disappearance. However, the staff seemed surprised to see him returning at that hour. It was as if they hadn't even noticed he hadn't come back with the rest of the group. The other kids sensed the awkwardness in the air and began to laugh at him. "See? No one even missed the crybaby. Better run to your bed and cry again, 'cause that's why you came back, isn't it?" The staff's indifference left Emily stunned. Brandon was embarrassed and hurt. She left with a heavy heart and decided to enter a nearby church. There she prayed that Brandon would find a family that would treat and love him genuinely. In the following days, Emily couldn't sleep peacefully. One night she dreamt of her late son, the one she had visited the day she met Brandon. It had been years since she last dreamt of the boy, leaving her deeply shaken. She couldn't fall back asleep. As she got up to get a glass of water, she remembered her last memory with her son. The two were on a beach, like they did almost every weekend, but she got distracted for a few seconds while applying sunscreen, and he ventured into the ocean alone. When she realized he wasn't on the shore, her heart froze. Hours later, the rescue team found the boy in the water, unfortunately lifeless. In the dream, he appeared in a house, repeatedly saying, "Mom, take me with you, please," while handing her a note with an address. Drinking water in the kitchen, Emily remembered the address and wrote it down so she wouldn't forget it the next morning, thinking it was just a dream. The next day, she shared everything with her husband, from meeting Brandon to her strange dreams about her late son. "My love, I don't understand any of this stuff. But if our son is trying to say something, I think you should listen," he said. Emily took the address and checked on her phone to see if it was real. To her astonishment, the address led to an orphanage, the very one where Brandon was living. Her husband, confused, thought it was too much of a coincidence, but she revealed she had bonded with that boy in the cemetery. "I felt good with him that day. I felt that he needed me, but I also needed him. We kept each other company. He's an honest boy, and for the first time in a long while I felt complete again," Emily said. Her husband hugged her tightly and declared that they were going to the orphanage right then and there. The couple was greeted by one of the staff members, who informed them that visiting hours had ended and that appointments had to be made by phone in advance. The man explained the situation, trying to persuade the staff member to make an exception, but he seemed adamant. Then, remembering Emily's account of the apparent indifference to the children's feelings, her husband offered two $50 bills. The staff member accepted without further questions and opened the door for the couple. "My boss isn't here, so enjoy yourselves," he said with a wide grin. Upon entering the room, Emily identified Brandon within seconds. He was sitting on the couch alone, while other children played. As soon as Brandon saw Emily, he ran towards her and hugged her. Her husband seized the moment to ask the boy a few questions. "Hey, tell me, what was a kid like you doing in the cemetery at that hour?" he inquired. Now more comfortable, Brandon looked down as he answered, "I was talking to my mom, sir. I was asking her to take me away from here, far away from here." The couple was shocked. How could someone so young express such deep feelings? Emily and her husband exchanged glances, unsure of what they were about to suggest to each other. Clearly, they both felt the desire to adopt Brandon right away, to take him home at that very moment. However, the situation wasn't that simple. Emily didn't want to feel like she was replacing her deceased son, but maybe her dream had given her a kind of permission to allow herself to love another child. After all, since her son had passed, her life had never been the same, and nothing or no one seemed capable of filling that void. After many discussions at home and a plan to navigate the complicated adoption process, the couple decided it was time to move forward, and most importantly, give a home to someone who desperately needed it. For months, they met the requirements necessary to adopt Brandon, visiting him almost daily to ensure he was being treated well. After what felt like an endless wait, the day finally came when Brandon saw Emily and her husband in the orphanage reception, waiting for him. With tears in her eyes, Emily opened her arms, and Brandon ran towards her. Their hug moved even the orphanage staff and some of the children who had previously mocked him. Brandon went home with his new family. Over time, he stopped being a withdrawn child and began to interact better with others. During a Sunday lunch, a new tradition in his new family, Brandon expressed proudly, "I'm so grateful to you both for everything, but I also thank my mother. I'm sure she somehow got me out of the orphanage. After all, she promised she'd take care of me." Emily also expressed her gratitude, recounting her visit to the church the day she met Brandon. Inside, she had prayed that the boy would find a loving family. Little did she know that family would be hers. Brandon and his new parents began visiting the cemetery once a month to remember their loved ones. Brandon would buy a bouquet of roses to decorate his mother's grave. Emily also made sure to always be close to her late son's grave, making it clear that both would never be forgotten. For Emily and Brandon, they mysteriously felt that these lost loved ones were truly responsible for that unlikely union, which resulted in the formation of a happy family once again. Leaving the cemetery, they headed to the park, where Brandon excitedly ran toward the carousel, his favorite ride. While he enjoyed himself, his parents watched him carefully and lovingly, knowing how much that moment meant to the boy. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.